Okay, let's try this with the camera on and see how this is going to go. Okay, so I was here and I was talking about. I'm not going to go through the exhaustive list, but there have been many individuals who have written about this topic. Depends how far back you want to go. I haven't had a chance to read Turing's papers on the topic on artificial intelligence itself and on cybernetics. Uh, Perhaps you could go back earlier and look at the history of mechanization and automation, because the events were in motion, uh, definitely with Babbage and Ada Lovelace, but prior to also. So I'm not going to go through the exhaustive list, but it's a beautiful day outside. uh, and sorry, off topic. And but yeah, the events were already in motion. So in a modern context, and modern in this sense could be equated to plus minus 45 years. I've shared some of the kind of references is barely skimming the surface with Nilsson. And I think I haven't had a chance to read any one of Nick Bostrom's books, but when I glanced through Superintelligence, I cannot. I don't even think I've read 1% of the book. When I was glancing through it, I think I saw a reference to folks like Niels J. Nielsen, who somehow I already kind of mentioned Nielsen's paper titled "Artificial Intelligence, Employment and Income," and that's something. So we're kind of like here right now. We're between existing state AI, which anyone who's been following the news has a appreciation of, and as well as interacting with the tools. So we're kind of like here right now, and we're potentially looking at the development of a intelligence that is going to be able to do any task that a human does. So I'm not going to go through the exhaustive list, but there's a lot of resources out there. um, Lex Friedman's podcast is a pretty good starter, in my humble opinion. I haven't gone through. I've probably gone through like 10, not even 10%. Maybe I've actually gone through a handful of episodes. So with regards to the total number of episodes, I don't know what that's going to come to. Uh, but there's a lot of other resources. There's a lot of good books written on the topic. I've read Kevin Warbeck's AI: The Basics, and that was my introduction to the topic going back 8 years ago. And I still consider myself to be a novice, very much uneducated on the topic. So my interest is more in the areas of AI safety and ethics right now and historically. It's really a question of ethics, but considering that AI provides us with the ability to be able to, it's a magnitude, like it just the ability to be able to magnify anything um, without all the reasons. These are the areas I'm personally interested in. Oh, I didn't notice the backgrounds. Okay, background's not showing. That's good. So yeah, I won't go through the exhaustive list, but you can, if you are interested in this area, highly like on the. I'm still learning on the as it relates to the areas of AI ethics and AI safety. I would very much. This is not why I was making this video, maybe unconsciously, but I would very much be interested in a role involving AI safety and AI ethics, provided that there was some kind of a stipend that could be made available for me to be able to gain meaningful employment that would allow me to make a meaningful difference and as it relates to the issues that are being discussed. And I think that would be a good exchange of energy, considering that this is a discussion or, sorry, a topic that's going to touch every single life on this planet and future lives. So coming back to the topic, I want to go through the list of resources. But if you do talk to ChatGPT, I guess that would be one way to start, is to talk to ChatGPT and ask it questions that you may have. Make a list of the recommendations that is giving you, because ChatGPT can provide you with a very condensed information in a very short amount of time, like microseconds. And then it's up to the user to take that information, write it down, and carve out your tasks based on the recommendations made, and do the work. Uh, there may be other suggested strategies as well, but I'm not going to go to the exhaustive list. I talk to other people, do a Google search. That's what I typically do. And listen, take notes, ask questions. There are many resources for doing so on LinkedIn, on Quora, in specific communities. I can't say I do a lot of that, because I've been more interested or engaged on the outer space and outer space, more recently, outer space security side of things, and sustainability. But I have been thinking about AI without going to the reasons. So once again, I did the disclaimer in the part one of this video. Again, I'm not a AI researcher, and I'm not a mathematician. So this is speculation at best, and all the information being shared in the following set of videos could indeed be incorrect. Definitely from a mathematical perspective, which I'm learning some help with. So I won't go into the exhaustive list here, but it looks like uh, there will be breakthroughs that will allow. Just give me one second. Excuse me. There will most likely be breakthroughs that will lead to the development of artificial intelligence that's going to be able to do any task that a human does. So the question, and picking up on the part one of this video, is one of AI ethics and AI security. So from my limited vantage point, some of the areas that are highlighted, and when it comes to AI safety, are the topic of the guardrails. And the best example of this is when you're driving and you're going around the bend or just on the side of the road. There are guardrails, and those guardrails are put in there, whether it's on the highway itself or on like a one kind of like a road going around a bend. On the highway, it's put in there so that you got traffic flowing in two directions, so this side doesn't go on the opposite side, vice versa, thus causing damage. Same with around the bend. It's that the driver doesn't go off the road into a ditch or what have you. So these are the reasons why you'd have guardrails in an automobile sense, and this is the same metaphor as being leveraged in order to be able to do something similar with artificial intelligence, so that the development is actually used for the purpose that it was intended, and it's not used for universally harmful purposes. I won't get into the details, but this is the gist of the guardrail problem or opportunity or issue. On the other area that's highlighted uh, is the one of alignment. So there are human values, and there's I won't go into the details because values do differ based on many different factors, including but not limited to culture, where you're born, and what have you. But there are a common set of emerging, or I guess depends how you look at it, human values, and those values is something. I think it's probably important to go a little deeper on this topic, but I'm not trained to at least explore that. I would think it would be philosophy, but I don't have a philosophy background. Um, Sorry. Um, I was thinking about something I have to do right after this recording. Uh, so there's a common set of human values, and the development, and as it relates to artificial intelligence, need to be in alignment with those values. Uh, and I guess if you think about it, it's closely related to the guardrail issue. Um, there are certain things we don't want the AI to do, or the AI coupled with the human. There's also a question of autonomy and self awareness, which I'm not going to explore right now, but I think it should be explored, and I've thought about this historically. Um, and my thinking is influenced from the, if you can call it, the Kurzweilian school of thought. I do consider myself to be a singularitarian, and I would say it's a very high probability that a technological singularity is going to happen. Uh, and now, if we're looking at possible scenarios whereby we could get to something like a superintelligence, kind of doing a bit of a leap here, but if the probability of superintelligence emerging is within 5 to 6 years or less, plus minus, then I would think that's a technological singularity. Uh, and there's a couple of different ways that I've personally thought about this, and I'm going to explain it in the following thoughts. But I would think the probability that the technological singularity is going to happen by 2038 is, sorry, 2028 is quite high. Again, this is a non-educated, non-scientific, non-mathematical assessment. When I say these, when I say what I say, I'm not mapping the transistors and the ability to fit enough transistors on a finite space, or the means and the mechanisms by which it's done. I'm not thinking about the development within the realm of artificial intelligence itself. I'm not thinking about the mathematical correlates, and I'm not thinking about a lot of other things when I say what I say. It's mostly listening to others, and kind of like, it's crude at best. Let's put it this way. There's also this, and I'm not trying to get away from this conversation, but there's also this. I would very much like to do this mathematically. Uh, there's also this question of the possibility that a superintelligence could have emerged in the past in a human sense. And I'm going to expand on this as I go along. When I say it's in a human sense, um, because there's another model that I've attempted to develop, which is in the following pages, and I don't know how to. So yeah, I'm going to get into that in a second. Um, okay, so to come back to the topic, um, between now and the 2028, uh, if I can summarize this in my uneducated perspective, a lot of changes are to be expected. Um, the reality is delicate because the developments can be applied in any area. Uh, and so ethics is at the heart of this development. And I think it becomes more and more imperative that ethics maybe should not be an elective. I don't know. I'm not going to be in a position to be able to say it's a writ or a law that everyone studies ethics now. But everyone will soon have. Increasingly, more and more individuals are going to have superpowers at their disposal or on their fingertips. Um, the tools like ChatGPT will keep getting better, and the line between machine intelligence and human intelligence will start blurring, and it would allow uh, anyone on the planet, in my opinion, my humble opinion, uneducated opinion, to flourish in a universal sense. Uh, and it's particularly, I would think, for creative types, is a pretty good time. Um, but that's not an anti-STEM comment. So there's creativity involved, and as it relates to any scientific and technological endeavors. Because I don't have a scientific background, I'm not going to be able to elaborate on the subtopic a lot, or if at all. It's a question of intuitive leaps or intuition. It's like, what do you mean by that? And as it relates to machine intelligence or human intelligence at that. But to come back to the topic, I think that's a very interesting topic. Again, it's like, what are the correlates of intuition? So when AlphaGo won against Lisa Dole, how did the machine actually model intuition? I think that's an important question from an educated perspective. The same is with the human intellect. I would think I'm biased, but I'm biased. Actually, I'm gonna take back what I was thinking. I was gonna say that I think that human intelligence is a lot more intricate. That's based on my understanding of consciousness, as rudimentary as it may be. But who's to say that in the future, machine-based intelligence or consciousness let's take a step back. Who's to say that in the future, machine-based intelligence is able? Who's to say that it's not able to traverse from intelligence and hierarchical models to consciousness and possibly spiritual experiences? So that is a singularitarian in me, and I used to say that I'm an 80% singularitarian, thinking that there's 80% probability of something like a technological singularity is going to happen within our lifetimes. But I think it's looking quite. Uh, I would kick that up a notch for me to a 95%, uh, and I'm not going to go into the reasons why. So to come back to the topic, and the sub point was that as more time passes by, the reality between human consciousness and machine intelligence, or human intelligence, machine intelligence, is going to start blurring in the sense that I'm not going to get into the Turing test. I'm not trained to talk too much about that. But I would think increasingly is going to start becoming more and more difficult in order to tell whether you have a behind the human behind a occurrence, not occurrence, but like something being said or done, or a machine. And I think in a lot of ways we're already there. Uh, it's called deep fake. Um, uh, it's, uh, it's there's a positive aspect to that in random order with the application of the technology like that in areas including healthcare and education, and possibly tying these technologies to um, language models or avatars and what have you. They are avatars. And there's the risk also, is a potential for these developments to cause a lot of destabilization, a fair bit of destabilization, and so I won't go too much into that. Um, but it does seem like as more time passes by, there's going to be more machine-based intelligence sorry, it's gonna become more I would say, like, if you are in virtual reality, there's like that uncanny effect where you kind of tell based on the pixelization that you can see the corner of your eye, or coupled with the fact that your body is static, and it's like there's a I won't get too deep into that topic because I don't know the method, like the research behind that, but like there's a like you are in virtual reality for a lot of different reasons. From the perspective of the pixelization aspect that I mentioned, the fact that it may not be like mobile, so there's causing some distortion from the perspective of balance of the body and what the visual cortex is experiencing. So like when you have that uncanny valley effect within virtual reality, and I would think we're kind of like in the similar uh, kind of junction or realm as it relates to artificial intelligence. But with the breakthroughs in sub areas, I would think this line would start getting blurred, and as the nuances are applied, uh, we're and I won't get into the detail of how because I don't know, but I think as you take a leap, uh, the probability that there's going to be human-based intelligence interacting increasingly with machine-based intelligence. So one of the pioneers in this space, in a modern sense, here, so one of the co-founders of DeepMind said, I think they made this prediction that in the future, I don't know which time frame they're talking about, but humans are more so going to be interacting with synthetic intelligence. So I tend to call this intelligence that is independent of a substrate. So the probability that humans are going to be interacting more so with artificial intelligence or artificial intelligence agents is higher. And if you look at your interactions, I'm kind of adding my own commentary to this at this point. But if you look at your set of interactions over a period of a week or a month or a year, as more time passes by, we're going to be interacting more and more with uh, artificial intelligence agents. So, coming back, in short, expect a lot of change within the next 5 years. Expect possibility, including the possibility of some pretty significant breakthroughs that will have in my opinion, in my humble opinion, possibly is going to be a step as we're taking steps towards superintelligence. Is going to be these steps as in the breakthroughs in different areas, and not just related to computation, artificial intelligence. These breakthroughs are going to be leading to paradigm shifting realities, and I think that uh, the possibilities are endless. But some of the key possibilities include, in random order, significant breakthroughs in specific means of harnessing energy, particularly fusion, um, which will have a huge impact on our civilization, as in the human and machine civilization, because energy is one of the areas that we've been struggling with it. And I want to go into the details with regards to why. I personally think I'm not a I don't have a psych background, uh, and I don't have a science background, but so I would think it's a communication issue. I think I'm not sure uh, because the energy infrastructure has been grounded in something that is only it's not type zero, but it's not type one either in a Kardashev sense. It's like 0 point something. Um, and the making of that comment ought not to suggest that the entire planet is going to be surrounded with some kind of a Dyson sphere or what have you, in order for it to be actually categorized as a type one civilization. Um, That being said, depends how you look at this, what the models actually suggest, like where we are with regards to the Milankovitch cycles. I I would think that the reliance on fossil fuels in order to be able to power a civilization of almost soon 10 billion people is extremely not just dangerous but irresponsible. And I won't elaborate on this, uh, but this is an area I've looked into in the past and an area I care about, um, without going into the details. Um, so coming back, a breakthrough like fusion, I would think, is very likely from my uneducated perspective. And this is a huge leap and possibly irresponsible to make a comment like that. But this is my intuitive guess. Nothing to do with the comments about intuition 10, 15 minutes ago. But my intuitive guess is that there's going to be a breakthrough with fusion. And as I've mentioned in my comments on Quora and possibly on LinkedIn and other sources, this breakthrough itself and in the realm of unintended consequences, the increased electrification is going to create other problems. So we're going to have other set of problems, which we probably as a species should start thinking about, because increased electrification, much as it would make life comfortable for billions of people, it also powers increased electrification itself powers the ability to be able to destroy biosphere at an increasing rate. So I put a note there at the bottom of this model because the state of the biosphere itself is unknown. And there are folks like Safa Mohtehsharrei and Jeffrey West from the Santa Fe Institute. I don't know Mohtehsharrei's alma mater or which institute he's actually engaged with right now, but they are there's two individuals I personally know of who model the reality of civilization in a mathematical sense. So Montessori kind of looks at like the evolution of a system, what little I know about him or his research. So just kind of look at the metabolic rate of organisms and try to map it like from a physics perspective, and then he kind of like leverage the same, I guess, technique to look at how cities evolve and grow, like the net inputs and in order to be able to sustain cities and kind of map it to things like cycles of innovation. So kind of goes into his S curves and uh, so that's as much as I know about Vesta's research. But Mohteshari, on the other hand, is more in the camp of building models. I would think both of them build models for sure. I would think so. Uh, how else would you model a reality in? Uh, so Mohteshari's models are more so focused on. He's got different research, so I'm not gonna expand too much on Mohteshari's research. But one of the models that he has called the Handy model. I forget what the acronym stands for, but he tends to what he suggests in that model is uh, basically is one of the things he's pointing to is carrying capacity. So he doesn't necessarily kind of look at it from a I don't know how much of the economic realities feed into that, but he's not looking at it. I don't know how much of Malthusian limit kind of play into that, so I won't get into that. But he kind of looks at resources, and he has this categorization of different kind of I guess in this case class structures. So like so I mean the biosphere is like one of the core areas of the model. So if you take out the biosphere, obviously things fall apart. Unless in a Lord Reese sense, we want to live as electronic brains in the future, which I would think is a different reality. So um, I would think it would be pretty bad. This is off topic, but I would think it would be pretty bad that if that happened, as that happens, that the future of life, say 100, 200 years, or 10 years at that, is mostly electronic brains in some reality. I would say it's net harmful to exhaust a resource like a biosphere and then traverse or transfer to that reality for many reasons. It sets a pretty bad precedence if everyone in the wider reality was doing that. Um, my philosophy has always been to leave a place better than you experienced it. So I'll just leave it at that. Um, but yeah, so I'm going a little off topic, but the probability of a technological singularity happening within the next 5 to 8 years is pretty high, in my humble opinion. And this now presents us with the challenges and the risks, and then the rewards. And the rewards, I would think, are uh, it's up to your imagination. Excuse me. Um, but within the realm of the next 5 years, you can expect to see a lot of paradigm shifting changes, and energy, space, finance. It's like Peter Thiel speaking here. It's like somebody asked Peter Thiel like 10 years ago, what are going to be three big areas? I think these are the three he mentioned: energy, space, and finance. But I would think that there's going to be a huge, there will be a huge set of major developments in each one of these areas. Now, it's not that this is going to happen by itself. Um, uh, the underlying activities are already in place with millions of entrepreneurs and scientists and change makers working towards creating the platform for the future or platforms for the future. So these developments are already underway, and a lot more is going to be possible, but at least from my uneducated vantage point. So I'm not doing justice here because we're not getting into like the deeper conversation about what's going to happen between now and the next 5 years. But if you are listening to this video, then one thing, if you only take one thing, then my sense is that the future reality is going to be exponentially better. And things may have been challenging from the perspective of COVID, and now uh, the wars. I think the war is like has been a persistent reality, and I'm not going to talk about this. Uh, uh, Picard's comments come to mind. I actually took an excerpt of that video, and I have it on the YouTube channel here. This video is probably going to be posted on YouTube. But uh, if you remember one thing, then the future realities, in a universal sense, in my humble capacity, are looking exponentially better. And I am going to take a little bit of a leap here because if we keep using technology, which is almost 100% probability, this is very like not controversial, but this is very uneducated. I would think that it's inevitable that an AGI is going to emerge. If we keep using technology, then it's inevitable that an artificial general intelligence will emerge. As that artificial general intelligence emerges, I would think it's inevitable that that artificial intelligence or those artificial general intelligences, whether they're conscious or not, which is a huge and important conversation by itself, as Sam Harris would say, we need to work towards understanding if the entity or energy is conscious, and if so, if it's suffering. Huge conversations. So there's a lot of different areas this conversation can go towards. But to come back to the topic, I would think the probability that superintelligence is going to emerge at some point is, I would say, almost a given. Because if you have AGI, then I would think it's all the way from a matter of minutes to maybe a couple of years. It's not going to be more than that. It's quite inevitable that a superintelligence is going to emerge based on our action, based off of our actions. And there's a couple of ways I guess you could think about this. But if you think computers used to be clunky and and huge, it required huge amount of space to run them. Um, the fact that computers have shrunk exponentially in the past 80 years, plus minus, and their computational capacity has increased exponentially. So is the situation. I don't know if I'm explaining this well. So is the situation with many different people interacting with machines and with each other. And based on those many different interactions, there's going to be the birth of an intelligence that's going to be able to learn from all of these interactions. And this is going to be something between an AGI and a superintelligence. But as this happens, let's take a step back. As we keep engaging with technology, this is inevitably going to happen. If, on the other hand, like let's do a little bit of scenario kind of exercise here. If you try to stop, or what's it called? If so, say this would be a very crude and bad way of defining the problem in my humble, uneducated capacity. But the technological retardation, deliberate slowing down or stopping of computers or the internet will have a net detrimental effect on humans, human civilization, possibly all life on this planet. Because if it's not going to be the humans who are going to be taking the patterns or the life itself to some other reality, then I don't know how it's going to happen. But this the I think Noam Chomsky said this. I don't listen to Noam Chomsky, but I think he's right that so it's on a spectrum. So there's a deliberate slowing down of the areas that I mentioned: computation, the internet, artificial intelligence. The degree to which you do that will have an impact on human, not quality of life, but also existence. So if tomorrow there's an extreme, I don't want to start with the extreme, but if tomorrow there was some kind of event, whether it's cosmic or human induced or made, which resulted into the shutdown of the internet, that would have catastrophic impacts on society. Um, and if you keep taking it like that, itself would be quite catastrophic. But if you then, I don't want to get into the specifics, but if you keep rotating the dial back on the technological progress, then Chomsky says a lot of people are going to die, like, uh, and it makes rational sense because civilization is incredibly technologically dependent. So I think Chomsky used the genocide word. Uh, so it's a dialing of the spectrum. So if you completely dial it back to, I don't know, 300 years ago, pre-computers, pre-internet, modern computation, I would think Chomsky's prediction is right. Uh, the counter argument is from folks like Bill Joy, former Sun Microsystems, or in extreme cases, Ted Kaczynski. Um, I won't go through each one of these. I've only read one article by Bill Joy. I've actually read Kaczynski's manifesto, where overall I disagree with the premise. I'm trying to pull this from memory because it's been a good 7 or 8 years since I read the manifesto. Overall, I would disagree with the premise. That being said, because every time Kaczynski's name comes up, it's controversial. Um, Kaczynski himself denies the allegations against him. Anyway, so putting those issues aside, there are some, I can't remember the exact details. I should be better prepared for this conversation. There are some points Kaczynski makes which make you think. I'm not agreeing with those comments, and I can't remember the details. It's been a long time, but like it's a moving narrative, and so it's like the Chomsky narrative. There's the Bill Joy narrative. There's the Kaczynski narrative, and then there's the in different, like this is not a spectrum. I'm just saying there's a moving pieces. And obviously there are many other narratives. I'm influenced by the Kurzweilian philosophy or school of thought. The life I'm able to make sense out of the books that are written. I did not understand a lot of how to create a mind because it was mathematically um, heavy, and I don't have a base in mathematics to be able to explore that more. But it seems quite, again, to come back to the topic. It seems uh, quite probable that this events can happen. There's others too. Sorry, Werner Vinge, Vinge or Vinge. I don't know how you say his name. He is the one who coined the term technological singularity. So I've listened to one of his talks on the topic. I think through the Long Now Foundation. And she's more recent. Uh, it's it's interesting talk, but the desires for a lot more conversations like that because I don't want to have a critical review of that. Like, who am but it was kind of one sided, and um, yeah, I don't know what the coordinates are with regards to Werner Binge's kind of thesis, like core argument there, with regards to what Chomsky's take on this topic, maybe because I'm just kind of barely holding these thoughts together. But it seems if we come back to the subtopic, uh, turning the dial back could have some pretty uh, bad consequences. Uh, on the other hand, and I just listened to Steve Almohandru, his interview on the Future of Life Institute. On the other hand, uh, the development itself could pose a risk, particularly with humans taking these developments to do something really bad. I won't go into the examples. So, so yeah, it's if we if we go retardation, it's gonna be bad. If we don't focus on the risks or do a poor job of defining the problem, is going to be pretty bad. So, what is the Venn diagram? That's a good question, I think. What is the ideal space? And the schools of thought. There are, I would think, they're mostly influenced by, I won't say who, but it's a couple of folks. I would think the work that Future Life Institute doing this is based on very limited amount of kind of interaction with their podcasts, like listening to a few, like maybe a handful, less than five. But I think they're an influential force in this area. There are other institutions too. I won't go through the whole list, and individuals at that. Um, but right now, as we speak, on November the 8th, 2023, approximately 9 o'clock Eastern, there are historically there have been the powerhouses of artificial intelligence, which has been in the domains of nation state. So my uneducated sense is that nation states like in random order: United States, China, Russia, uh, countries maybe across the European Union and Canada, um, possibly Israel. I'm not sure. These countries in Japan would have core. They would be quite adept in the realms of computer science and artificial intelligence. At that, some more, some less. Now it's getting more democratized, and as it this development gets more democratized, uh, there's a couple of schools of thought on what ought to happen next, and um, there's a couple of moving pieces there. There's a couple of different schools of thought. One is that these models, so I don't know if I mentioned this in the first part of the video or the second part, the models that are behind like the developers that we see like ChatGPT and what have you, I think we're like some are still here, I would think. But the models are are trained on data, and training these models itself on the data requires computation. This predominantly powered by uh, GPUs. So I don't know much about GPUs. So I mean, every computer has a CPU, including the computer that I'm recording this video on, including the phone. Computers typically are running on a central processing unit, um, whereas the GPU is something. The short understanding that I have on the topic is in order to power the graphics for video games. I could be wrong explaining this, but like a heavier processor was put on the graphics card itself historically, so that video game players would experience a richer experience and not have to deal with lag and what have you. Um, so these graphics processor, I think it was NVIDIA. I could be wrong, but NVIDIA decided to. Uh, NVIDIA noticed this need to be able to train these models from a computation perspective, and they were already, I think, one of the leaders of, I think it's AMD and then NVIDIA. I'm not sure of the graphics processing industry, but they're like, we've already done this work for video games and graphics processing. So they worked on creating the sub realities that would then give rise to the GPU or graphics processing unit. I think that's what a GPU stands for. You've got a central processing unit, and then you've got a graphics processing unit. I think, I'm not sure. Uh, but the GPUs are now used for training these models. Now the thing is that this GPU realm is provisioned by a handful of organizations around the world. And I'm not going to say who these organizations are and where they're located, but there are only a handful of companies that make GPUs, or they lead to these graphics processing units being provisioned or manufactured. Uh, this area is not something like, if you wanted to make a computer, you could probably just make a computer in anywhere. You could put a bare bones computer together, probably in any continent, obviously with the exception of Antarctica. But GPU is not like that, the way I understand it. So the creation of the GPU requires heavily specialized skills, and these skills typically cannot be taught in school. That's what I've heard. Um, so you can only, there's like so imagine if you had to make a, I don't know, you had to make a pen, for example, right? Not a pencil, a pen. So you would have like a finite number of processes within the manufacturing realm, or as a part of the supply chain system, or you would procure that pen. So you could make that pen, if you were going to summarize it like that, with the integration of maybe anywhere from 2 to 5, maybe 15 processes. And we've got a pen. I'm not talking about the distribution and whatnot. I'm just talking about the manufacturing of that pen, like that object. For a GPU, there's anywhere from 100. I forget. It's like either 100 or 1,000 processes involved, and each one of these processes is incredibly specialized. And it's been said that only by doing the work can you understand that how these processes work. Nobody who's involved in one process understand what's happening in another process. So how, I won't go into the detail, but it seems like it's sufficiently difficult to create. Now the question is one of using AGI itself to solve the GPU problem. That's an interesting thought. I would think that would that is solvable. I won't get into the details how, but one of the so to come back to the GPU is a chokehold, and geographically, I won't go to the exact details, but North America, Asia, and Europe. These are their energies within three regions, which are responsible for almost 100%, if I remember correctly, of GPUs made in the world, and also a lot of the not so advanced chips, like chips for fridges and microwaves and washing machines. They also come from same reality. Not 100% in this case, but I don't know what proportion. But GPU is 100%. There are chokeholds, and so one of the propositions being shared is that access to GPUs should be controlled, because anyone could interact with the models themselves, but in order to be able to train the models, you need the GPU. So if you control the GPU, you control the evolution of the models, right? So that's one kind of solution that's being proposed. However, that being said, there are already energies in place to have some redundancy. Um, there's a part of the world, if this part of the world, which is a relatively small part of the world compared to the continent, like let's say in South of Australia or what have you, but in this part of the world, if it was to be hit by an asteroid, uh, I would think we would forget as a species how to make GPUs. I'm not picking favorites here. I'm just stating the facts, right? So, anyway, so the question now is one of the chokehold and how the chokehold is going to be applied. Sorry. One of the supply chain areas, and The other is of redundancy. So how will redundancy be applied? Right? Uh, and so there's this in parallel. There's this thought of controlling the GPUs because if actors with different intentions had I'm speaking like I guess stating the facts, but maybe I should. But so yeah, so we're still here. We're still here. So we wanna, as a species, and I wasn't thinking about this to this extent, but after listening to Omuhandru, I've I was thinking about I have been thinking about I've actually made another video on AI safety. I think 2 or 3 years ago. I forget the exact time. But my views on the topic were still forming, and they're still forming, as I'm not an expert. But yeah, I'm curious. I'm curious to hear more from Omohandru on this topic. Okay, so in the interest of time, we're going to move along, and which would require to take a skip. But I was kind of trying to explore the landscape from a lot of different perspectives. If you like, so to reiterate, if we turn the dial back on the technological progress, it depends on the degree to which the dial is turned back. I don't want to start on the extreme end, but the complete turning back of the dial, significant turning back of the dial, in my humble opinion, and I'm just regurgitating I don't know how you say the word, but I'm just repeating what others have said. What I would think it makes rational sense that the degree to which you turn back the dial correlates with a negative, net harmful impact on the human machine civilization. And if you completely turn it back and stop it, then unless consciousness works in ways that are uh, esoteric, to put it succinctly, I would think it would be harmful for humans to turn the dial back completely and stop it. Uh, well, civilization would not function first of all without technology, and secondly, there's no a means to be able to define problems and no means to be able to shield against not just existential risk but also risks towards civilization. So there's an existential risk, and then there's risks on the civilizational sense. But I don't see how you could do that without technology. Maybe there's a way. So somebody please educate me on that. So that was one end. The other end is I don't know if it's different ends, but the other end obviously there's a need for safety and security and effective regulations. Uh, so that would be on the path towards, right? Unless you have a dialing back, then you've got like I don't know. So it looks like there's a path. Like maybe the choosing of specific logos is misleading. I wasn't thinking about all these points when I have these arrows. But I would think there's again, if we keep using technology, something like AGI is going to emerge. And as AGI emerges, it will undoubtedly lead to some superintelligence. So I'm gonna. There's a whole bunch of thoughts here. Like I don't know. Like I'm thinking, but I'm not gonna have the chance to be able to expand and elaborate on that today. So this is a little. This may sound a little crazy, but uh, skipping ahead, I would think as uh, superintelligence starts emerging, the means and ability to be able to detect advanced technosignatures increases exponentially, which is something again I started exploring this in another. Basically, I took Dr. Sarah Seeger's. Actually, I don't know if she has a PhD. Sarah Seeger, Canadian American scientist who modified the Drake's equation So I modified Seeger equation. This is my first attempt at this. I'm going to come back to this in a second. So I want to go back here because this the model and specifically the conversation today or thoughts today. I was thinking of deltas. So delta in a mathematical sense is I would equate it as the rate of change. So I was thinking like maybe what we're looking at is uh, in a delta sense or like change or difference in value. I think this link points to Wolfram alpha, um, or just a definition. So I was thinking there's a change for the development of artificial intelligence itself. And I refer to as artificial intelligence as intelligence that is independent of a substrate. Because if you come to a point in the future, in a Kurzweilian sense, the age of spiritual machines, where Kurzweil predicts that it's going to get increasingly difficult in order to tell how much of us is machine and how much of the machine is human. Uh, and typically, when we think about things like this, is like this conjures up images of maybe I think I'm not sure. I can't speak on behalf of everyone, but you think like RoboCop or maybe even the Terminator. But we also need to realize that there is work happening in domains other than computation and artificial intelligence. So the degree to which change is happening or the rate of change within those realms will feed a reality or a set of realities in the future whereby not only is there going to be augmentation in a human sense, but the change that we're seeing for these models will also start becoming more and more intricate and interesting, to put it succinctly. So, for the human development, this means well, it's a huge conversation by itself. What this means from many different perspectives: transhumanism to life extension to end of diseases or significant reduction in a lot of different diseases, augmentation. The list goes on and on and on. But again, and so like on so that's on a human realm, and on the machine realm, you're going to have machines that will be uh, more human-like. And as more time passes by, this is going to happen. There's a reality in the middle too, if you want to put it that way. There's a cyborg reality. And so, in a Kurzweilian sense, going back to the age of spiritual machines, humans will have relationships with machines. But it's not a us versus them kind of reality. There's a Martin Rothblatt angle to it also, who's written a book called Virtually Human. There's a question of mind files and conscious AIs, I guess, if you want to put it that way. I don't think she used the term conscious AIs in that book. Excuse me. There's a question of suffering, which I'm not going to explore here, but it's a very deep conversation from my uneducated perspective. And I haven't been able to absorb enough of, well, a couple of different thinkers and authors. Just one second. Yeah, there's a handful of authors. I'm not going to be able to expand on this because I haven't read the books. But there has been this question that if we can enable any experience in the future, then what kind of future do we want to have? And different researchers and thinkers have had different perspectives on this. It's an important question, uh, it's a crucial question. Um, and the role of suffering, I just haven't uh, absorbed, like I had a chance to listen to enough. I can't, I don't have an opinion on this, but I think it would not be wise to remove suffering altogether. This is an area of work in progress for me. So, but I am personally not in the camp of like things like diseases. Like we are already on a path towards eliminating a lot of the diseases, polio almost, um, a lot of vaccination against a lot of other diseases. With the application of machine learning, probably is quite high that we're gonna have increasing ability to be able to cure cancer. Next up would be I'm kind of going fast, but these are all incredible achievements within their own realm because humans have been humans have not had any insurance or cure against these realities or these realms or diseases. Um, there's genetic diseases like sickle cell anemia, which I don't know. I actually forget what the symptoms would be. Um, but it's a genetic disorder which could be eliminated in the future. Um, two things like aging. So I'm kind of jumping from one to another, but and I think I need to take a break. But yes, I was still kind of here. I do want to wrap this up, but I want to take a break also. Um, so to come back to the model, I would think is a combination of these realms or realities, whereby we're seeing change or the rate of change in a couple of different realms. One of them in random order is development of intelligence that is independent of the substrate. The other realm is the development of the human consciousness and well-being. Because the development of intelligence that is independent of a substrate is going to learn from data that has been developed by humans. So the intelligence that is independent of the substrate will most likely take on the values of its human progenitors or ancestors. No, progenitors. I think it's ancestors. Progenitors, like I think I used the word right. I think progenitor is another word for ancestor. Progeny. A progenitor is someone who gives rise to a family line. So human would be the progenitor or the ancestor, right? Anyways, I need more coffee. So it's the intelligence that is independent of a substrate is going to be trained on data that is being developed by humans. They will learn from humans, just like children learn from parents. And that is something I've shared in the past. Um, because the model whereby AI itself is going to be conscious, I think between conscious and unconscious there's a realm, like, or spectrum. And I'm in the camp. I mean, I eat chicken, and I just had some red meat. I don't eat a lot of red meat. I probably eat 2 kilograms of red meat every 5 years, and that's a lenient. So I'm not being conservative, so I need to take a break. But this is I have been thinking about this. The rate of change for development of intelligence, independent of a substrate, development of human consciousness and well-being. Then I don't want to skip because these are all the good parts. Maybe I need to do a part three now. Then there's the development of intelligences that are self-aware and independent of a substrate. So same as what is known as AI now, or intelligence independent of a substrate, only that it's now self-aware or is on a path towards becoming self-aware. And finally, there's the development of superintelligence. So this all of this reality at some point, I would say some point here, maybe we are already taking the steps to do that, because there are people, I am sure, that are applying machine learning models towards making sense out of the wider reality, whether it's the size, shape, composition of the cosmos, the solar system, then the galaxy, the spiral arms of the galaxy, and what have you. More intricate formations with regards to how the black holes work. Um, Maybe other realms too, like dark matter, dark energy, which I don't seems mysterious. Uh, but there are already people applying these models in these realms. There are people that are applying these models in other realms. Sorry, scales, not realms. Scales, like the quantum scale, right? So that's something I don't know anything about, so I won't get into it. Like like uh, quantum chemistry. Well, now you have quantum chemistry, and you have machine learning being applied in that realm. What's what will the intelligence that is independent of the substrate going to find there? That's the question. So all of this is going to result. I'm not saying it's pointing towards that, but one of the things that I think is going to happen, if the probability of finding technosignatures that are independent of the kind of development we've been seeing in a human machine sense here in this reality, however this works, without invoking multiverses and what have you, or many worlds interpretation. However, this technology is evolved here, making the assumption or set of assumptions that our evolution has not been influenced by some phenomena, however it works out there. Assuming that evolution has happened the way it's happened in this realm, the way we understand it, without any influence, as we are now taking the steps towards ushering some kind of a super intelligence, this is a huge leap. But I would think, oh, I put a note here once again. Sorry, before that. I'm just putting, I mentioned this 35, 40 minutes ago, that, how do you get rid of this? The point at the bottom, if I do this, the lines become, the state of the biosphere is unknown. We're talking about all these things, Well, we don't really know what's going to happen next, particularly with regards to the possibility of the tipping points, rapid climate change, some terror or error phenomena that could have devastating impacts, existential risks, and risks to civilization. So it's not fair to kind of categorize that under the state of the biosphere, but we live in the biosphere. And so maybe it should be biosphere slash noosphere, Noosphere. I'm inclined to think that consciousness is interesting, to put it succinctly. But that's the part of me that is not reason and logic, because I cannot explain that through reason and logic. I wish I could, but that's my intuitive feeling that consciousness can survive the bodily death. What that means in what that really means, I don't know. This is my feeling. I won't talk about that right now. So, as we're taking steps towards achieving some kind of, not achieving, but some kind of superintelligence will emerge. This is where I make a segue to the next model. The next model is what I shared. This is my first attempt towards modifying the Seeger equation towards trying to figure out what super. So again, assuming that the probability that superintelligence, however it's emerging here within the next 5 to 10 years, if the probability of this phenomena happening in a wider reality is not zero, and considering that the universe has existed, there could be other worlds, dimensions, multiverses. Considering the age of the universe, if again the probability that other civilized intelligences have not, sorry, if that probability is not zero, then the question is how many perceptible technosignatures are there? What, like, I wouldn't use specific words, but because I don't know much about uh, frequencies and uh, finding the signal in the noise, so to speak. Just thinking of contact for a second. But again, this could be the religious kind of part of my brain or whatever. But this is how I'm thinking about this. So R represents the number of realities openly transmitting a perceptible signal. Like the signals are already there. We're just too dumb to realize that. I think Dr. Michio Kaku says something along those lines. The question is, how are they fashioned? Is it like a really powerful laser? Is it in the quantum realm? I don't know, right? This also includes, by the way, signals that intelligences could have left behind, whether they went into a deep cryosleep, whether they went to another reality, whether they are extinct. As as compared to relics, whereby they have stone scrolls and what have you, they could have left behind incredibly detailed simulations being maintained by automatons. And these automatons may or may not be conscious. So there's a huge spectrum of possible realities. Now, that is what R represents, right? It includes the signals, to put it succinctly, that could be out there, including the techno signatures left behind as relics. I think a relic is a better example because I've got the fraction of techno signatures here. Now, that is R, and this is now comprised of Rx would represent probabilities attached to the number of realities that have the potential of beaming signals. This is very, yeah, this is the first attempt. Let's put it this way. This one is making the assumption that the fraction of stars that are quiet, I just borrowed this straight from Seeger equation. FP, I think this is a subscript, right? Yeah, I need some help on the math side. So this represents the fraction of stars that have planets around them, period. As technologically advanced intelligence may not be dependent on a substrate. This represents fraction of planets that can be observed, including rogue planets. And finally, this is the fraction of realities which are producing a detectable technosignatures. And I got a note here that I do not know how to factor technological relics, which I was kind of sharing here. So these would be the relics left behind by even slightly advanced civilization, not event. Even intelligence slightly more advanced than us could be the equivalent of superintelligence for us, whether they are still there or they are long extinct. So we have this tendency to think of relics as like we think of relics from our vantage point, but again, the relics left behind by superintelligences could be entire realities that have a life of their own. Okay, now life of their own and a ethical standard. So when we think of Star Trek for ourselves, and in the realm of Star Trek, we have the Prime Directive, which is really ethics. There's an ethical code that drives the Prime Directive. If there are relics out there and they have a life of their own, then there would be some equivalent of a Prime Directive, which would be governed by a set of ethics, which itself would govern how those relics or advanced entities interact with other intelligences. Because just the act of interaction itself could have huge consequences on the timeline. Not like a timeline, but like on the timeline of the evolution of a, how can you say that? Like a differently evolving, it's not lesser or more, it's just different ways of evolving. Like you probably don't want to give nuclear technology to the tribes in Amazon, right? So that's maybe a crude example, but this is what I started thinking of. So what I'm thinking is that super intelligences are going to have the means and capacity in order to be able to find the signal in the noise. This is a bit of another leap, but there are some historical projects. I won't go into the details, but there are some historical projects that are truly groundbreaking in the sense of not just how the imagination was applied, but the feat of accomplishment. Now, I don't know the results from such experiments, and I can't say which experiment it is. Let's just say it is an experiment. Well, the experiment itself, I can share what the experiment was not, but the experiment itself is in the public domain, and it's a model that was put together to automate cancer research. And it was quite audacious. So I will not get into the specifics, but bird, I was looking at a bird distracted me. But Yeah, I gotta wrap this up. So it's this this this. I don't know why I started thinking of technological relics as I was thinking about the previous slide, which was mostly AI ethics and the steps towards superintelligence. But I would think that the superintelligence, the superintelligence, and I've shared this in my comments on Quora and elsewhere, but the superintelligence is not just going to improve itself. The question is going to improve itself recursively. Like the thing is, if it improves itself recursively, then how does it exercise ethics? And these are important questions because if the superintelligence is not applying a very stringent, or I don't know how to describe this, but it could be bad if the superintelligence just seeks to do what it wants to do with a disregard for life and how it exists in this reality. The equivalent of that would be, I don't know what's a good equivalent, but alien species, or us for that matter, going to another planet and doing whatever we want without regard for life on that planet would be horrific for that life form. And I don't want to say this, but so far our track record is not good. Depends how you look at it. Um, or you could say maybe in a cosmic sense we are learning. We're like some baby intelligence from a consciousness perspective, I guess. Um, so the superintelligence would not would have whatever it's doing in terms of recursive improvement. Must put ethics at the heart of like a very stringent, advanced level of ethics, which would include our well-being, right? So when we're talking about the evolution of this development and what it means for us, clearly we want to avoid the extinction trap, or not the trap, but the reality. We want to avoid uh, the reality whereby when you, if the dial has to be like, not, no, how should I say this? We must avoid the reality of not having to turn the dial back to have net harmful impacts for quality of life and for survival. So this is getting abstract right now, and I got to take a break. So the development of the super intelligence should be good not just for the super intelligence itself, but it should be good for us. That's a huge conversation once again. But a lot of people don't think, at least I don't know how many folks are thinking. We're thinking, we're only thinking guardrails, which is very important, and alignment, and maybe something else. We are thinking maximize the rewards, manage the risks with guardrails and alignment, avoid extinction for sure, right? Whatever you do, avoid that. Uh, but what we're not thinking is, this is what I think this is I think this is more likely. So again, if the probability that intelligent life, tool making life, the probability of tool making life is not zero outside the realm that we are accustomed to, like we say Earth, right? But reality, really. If that reality, if that probability is not zero, then there should be not just signals, but relics. And superintelligence should, in theory, have, will develop the computational abilities, the sense making abilities, in order to be able to make sense out of the noise or find the signal in the noise, if the signals exist. As that happens, that will be a paradigm shifting event for life on what we say this planet, but it's really life with this frame of reference. We have a specific frame of reference, right? I won't go into the philosophical angle here, but if we were going to go back in time, not turn the dial back, if we were going to go back in time, then at some point, I don't know when exactly, there's different schools of thought. Because when I look at the relics from ancient Indian temples or Egyptian relics at that, I would think there was a very advanced civilization here. I will stop there because I don't want to go too deep on that end. I don't know how old that civilization is. It depends on how geology has been applied on the structures, not the geology. What does the evidence suggest? So I would think that there was a very advanced set of civilizations here, and I will stop there. But there was a frame of reference, however things were evolving at that time. So at some point, there was a civilization, so the Sumerian civilization, however old it was, it looks like they were encoding information on clay tablets. And so the ability to be able to process information was, it seems like it was lesser. Depends how you look at it. So there's the consciousness aspect, and then there's the machine intelligence aspect. And it sounds a little flimsy when I say it that way, but I really feel there's a deeper meaning of consciousness. Um, uh, yeah, I think I got to wrap this up. So these are my set of thoughts, and I would think that superintelligence will find these signals in the noise. And as that happens, it's going to be, wow, I don't even know. I mean, if you bring a person who was living in our sphere of understanding what we think was life like during ancient Sumeria, maybe it was technologically more advanced than us, who knows? But it looks like it was a much simpler version of civilization. So if you bring a person from ancient Sumeria into our frame of reference, they will be astounded without a shadow of a doubt. Because to them, our existence would be the equivalent of being surrounded by superintelligences. And you know, we have a lot of superintelligences on the planet already. I won't go into the details. Like the governments are a form of superintelligence on their own. Some companies are a superintelligence. Like Apple is a superintelligence. Nobody can make a phone like Apple or Google or any of the Samsung or any of these companies. Khan Academy is a superintelligence. There's many different superintelligences, and so from the relative perspective of somebody being transported into another frame, so so the question is the same, but how many more signatures could be out there is the question. And we may not have the cognitive models to be able to even discern those signals, because just like an ant does not have the means or ability to be able to do linear algebra. At least I don't think so. Maybe it can. If we could talk to an ant, maybe we can teach it how to do linear algebra, and that would be it. That would be a surprise. What a surprise that would be. But just like an ant doesn't have the means or ability to do linear algebra, I mean I struggle with that, but it doesn't have the mental models to be able to perform certain activities. Similarly, we may not have the mental models to be able to sense and perceive. Again, it is a question of probability. This is not a ancient aliens kind of episode. I've nothing against ancient aliens. You can actually learn some interesting stuff by watching shows, but it's a question of probability. This is the probability that intelligence outside of our frame of reference, tool making intelligence, is not zero. Then the question is, how many perceptible signals could be out there? And as the superintelligence develops the means and ability to be able to build some kind of a cognitive sense making structure, not only will it have the capacity to be able to find these signals and make sense out of them, it would also, it should, well, I don't know if it's going to do all of this, but there's an ethical realm, right? There's a huge ethical layer. Maybe based on our behaviors, what we are seeing in our reality, maybe we're not ready for these signatures. Forget the signatures, just mixing and matching human level activities in a generative sense could usher incredible realities, right? But maybe we're not ready for those realms. So the question then is, and it is a huge conversation, what would this superintelligence do? It would, like, how, and the question then is, how much of its behavior can we influence today? Because now it's on a spectrum. Either it's non-conscious or it's conscious, or maybe there's something in between. That's a conversation by itself. I mean, who's to say we are conscious, right? So what is like the conscious experience? Is it relative? Like, what does it mean? Um, but if this superintelligence, or between AGI and superintelligence, if it becomes self-aware, then we have the time right now to influence its behavior in the future without invoking physics here, huh? Or relativity. Uh, I mean, how can something be superintelligence and not conscious? Anyways, I won't go into that. But these are my set of thoughts. This, I think, slide was more abstract than the previous slide, and feedback is great. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Abrupt ending, but I gotta go.